Much, Michelle. That is a really, really exciting intro. I hope I can live up to the expectations. I am super, super excited today to be with all of you, and I've been seeing everybody here being super engaging with the chat. And I really, really hope that we continue the same spirit. If you have any questions for me, I'll be keeping an eye out on the chat. Let this be a conversation. I really, really would love to share as much as I can because honestly, for me, being on a gap year. I've been on two gap years actually, so I can give you bonus experiences. I was on a gap year between high school and university, and then I was also in a gap year before going to high school in a new country. So I've done two gap years, and they have been life changing for me. So what I want to share with you today is what they never taught me in school because there's no matter how many degrees you have, no matter how many even PhDs if you have, there's some things that you just can't learn in school. And I've met so many lecturers, PhD experts, and there's some things that they're still missing in their education. So first of all, I want to say same as what Michelle has been congratulating you. Congratulations for taking this first step to go out of the comfort zone, to do a little bit something different than the rest of the people. So you've already done the first step, and this is the beginning of your journey to learn so many things. So without further ado, I'm gonna start my talk about what they never taught me in school. Can you please give me a thumbs up if you see my presentation? Thumbs up in the chat. All right. Okay, so yay. Okay. Thank you, Maddie PJ. Thank you, Apollo. That's great. Okay. So a little bit about me. I make films. I work as a DOP. A DOP is a director of photography. So people hire me to work on large sets, and I've been doing this for about 10 years. You can see in these pictures, I'm using some really big cameras. This one in the middle here, this is a $220,000 camera that is used in, this is, I'm not allowed to say exactly what this shoot was, but it's something similar to Planet Earth. It's going to be out on Netflix in a year. So I have been making films now for Netflix, which is really strange to say because 8 years ago, 10 years ago, I would have never thought, when I was just starting out, I would have never thought that my career has accelerated so fast. And I think the secret of my career having accelerated so fast is the lessons that I did learn while I was on my gap year and the lessons that I'm about to share with you now. So apart from being a DOP and a cameraman who has worked in so many different countries, so okay, I'm gonna list the countries, but let's see if you're any faster. I'm gonna test you guys on your trivia. So all the countries here in blue, just keep typing, guys. Every country that you recognize, please, 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 just type it, and let's see if you get it right. Yeah, you got Canada, you got Kenya, yes. So Canada, Kenya, Tanzania, which is my home country. I'm from Tanzania, East Africa, Mexico, South Africa, Madagascar. That's right. India, yeah, everybody in the chat. You all Ghana, yeah, Carol, that's right. That's Ghana. That's Ghana. That's Nigeria, China. Yeah, I just got back from China a month and a half ago making a film there. Tajikistan, no, not yet. I haven't quite yet been to Tajikistan, unfortunately. So I've been to 16 different countries in Africa, and then no, Carol, no, it's not Chile, it's Peru. So that's the country in South America that's shaped like a pea, is Peru. Really good geography. I'm really, really impressed. And I can see that everybody has already been doing your research for your gap year and thinking about what countries to go to. So Bangladesh, no, Guatemala, no. So I've been to Costa Rica, Canada, Peru, Mexico, Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, South Sudan, Kenya, Uganda, Burundi, Malawi, Mozambique, Angola, Zambia, South Africa, Madagascar, India, China, and Malaysia, and Zimbabwe. Exactly. So I've had the honor and the privilege, honestly, to not only go to these beautiful places and be in some of the most incredible. I've worked a lot in national parks because I work as a natural history filmmaker. I get to go in places where other people haven't been. I've One of my favorite experiences was in South Sudan. I was in a tiny airplane with, so it says on the airplane that this is not a commercial aircraft. This is only for recreational purposes, and it was so scary because it was like a really slow plane. Like the speed, it was like a motorbike in the air. It was going really, really slow, and I was out with my camera on a gimbal filming the world's biggest migration. So it's known that biggest migration, if you Google it, it's going to tell you it's in Tanzania. It's the wildebeest migration, but that's actually not true. They just found out earlier this year that the world's biggest wildlife migration is in South Sudan, and it's an animal called the kob and the tiang, which is a type of antelope, and there's 6 million animals, and they haven't been filmed before on camera. And I was one of the first people last year to be able to go onto this experience. I was on a plane, and I was really like a periscope, because the plane was going forward. I was filming outside in this like 45-degree angle with an open door, so I couldn't film the wing because obviously we don't want it in the shot, and I couldn't film the propeller. So I had like this 30 to 45-degree angle of where I could film, and the plane was going really slow and it was like circling all these animals. And I was just sitting there thinking that this is the most incredible thing ever. But I also got motion sick and I kept puking. So every time that I was filming and looking out, I filmed the animals, I throw up, get everything dirty, and then I kept filming. So that was like one of the most amazing experiences in my life. And like probably a handful of people have ever seen that migration. I mean, going forward, a lot that's going to be open to tourism, and a lot more people will be able to do that. But who like who can say that I'm the only one who has filmed this thing that will now be a tourist migrate attraction that other people will see. So I'm extremely blessed and grateful for all of these experiences, but it wasn't always like that. um, Okay, before I go to it, wasn't always like that. A little bit more about me. I started an NGO right last year called the African School of Storytelling. And the African School of Storytelling, what we do is we try to mentor storytellers all around the continent. So far, I've got now 45 students all over Africa that I've mentored. I've taken them out with me on shoots. I've designed programs, and that's the website that Michelle has just put. Mariana is asking at what age. So I'm currently, even though I have this really big beard that makes me look much older than I am, and there's a reason that I like to look older than I am, I'm only 27 years old, and I started AfriSource, this NGO, when I was 24. And before that, I started another enterprise, which I'll tell you about in a moment. But this NGO is dedicated to working with communities around the continent, especially indigenous people, to mentor them, give them skills of how to use cameras, and for them to be able to tell their stories. Because Africa is really like an image of like it's not accurately represented in the world stage. We always think about pictures of famine, poverty, disease, war, corruption, but I'm dedicated to change that through this NGO. I want people to be able to share the beauty of Africa and to be able to also preserve their own heritage, because there's a lot of communities around the continent that I've had the honor to meet in my travels that have taught me so much more than what I've learned in school. They've taught me real knowledge, even though those people are not educated. Some of them don't know how to read, many of them don't know how to write. They know so much more in terms of how to live sustainably with nature, in terms of how to live peacefully with one another. And these are really important lessons in this day and age with the state of our world. So what I've realized is I have a very strong connection to communities on the ground. And this is me a week ago. I was filming. I'm currently making a film. I'm making my first 90-minute documentary, a feature documentary, with the Hadzabe hunter-gatherers in Tanzania. And these hunter-gatherers have been living for 50,000 years in the northern part of Tanzania, hunting, gathering, living off the land. They don't stockpile food. They don't keep food. They live day to day to day. And imagine the skills that you have to read your environment every day, to track, use the skills to find out where's your next meal going to be. They have never in their history had the word famine in their dictionary, because even in the driest of droughts, they've known where to find food. So, I mean, these kind of skills and this kind of knowledge is really what I'm drawn to. And this is really my calling and my passion. But it took me a really long time to figure out what was my calling, what was my passion, and what I really want to do. And I'm going to tell you about it right now. So where I grew up was Tanzania in East Africa, and I grew up very close to nature. Uh, Apollo is asking, when is the film coming out? So I think it's coming out in middle of 2026. But every feature documentary filmmaker that I've talked to has always extended the period that they think the film is going to be. So if you think you're going to film for 1 year or 2 years, it's probably going to be 5 or 6. So I really hope it's not going to be that long, because I've already been working with this community for 3.5 years now, 4 years actually. And I've been learning their language, and it's a really hard language because it's a language isolate, which means that it's not related to any other language in anywhere else in the world, and it has clicks. Like, for example, to say, I'm going to say something right now in Hadza. um, Akanabekwa Ngubukwane Ngai na Ichana. So what I just said is, my name is Ngubukwa, which is the name that they gave me in the community. It's the name of a flower that grows in a baobab tree. And I said that I've come from very far. So it has a lot of clicks. It's a really difficult language. I'm learning it now because I want to really be in the field with them. Next year, 2025, I'm going to be in the field for 250 days with the Hadza. So that's 9 months being with the community, learning how they hunt, learning how they gather, learning how to live with nature and survive. So like, that's really my calling right now, and I'm putting everything I can to prepare for that moment. But going back to my childhood, I grew up in Tanzania, and I grew up to a family of Indian immigrants who came. So my parents had an arranged marriage. They knew each other for like 7 days before marrying, and in those 7 days, they probably met each other for like 6 hours in total. They barely met one on one. When they met, there were other people around. The families were talking, asking questions. So they didn't even know each other at all. Like, probably had like 5, 6 questions asked. Like, imagine going on a date and like having like 4 questions and then deciding to marry without even seeing if there's a vibe or a chemistry. So that's what happened to my parents, and that was quite common in that time, and still is at the moment for many other families in India to do arranged marriage. So not only did they have an arranged marriage and not know each other, they came to a new country where they didn't even speak the language, and that's where I was born, in Tanzania. They were there 2 years. They raised me. I grew up very close to nature. I climbed trees. I was in the water. There was a lake close by, and I just really at a young age connected to nature. But then, one thing about me is, obviously, as a I mean, I'm in an African country, in Tanzania, where 99% of the people are black, but I am not black. I'm Indian. I'm a brown person in a black country, quote unquote. And what that did to me was, even though I completely felt as a Tanzanian, and I felt like this is my lived experience, all my friends were Tanzanian. I spoke Swahili really well. I totally connected with the land even more than India, because I went. My parents would take me to India every now and then, like every 2 years. They would take me there to meet my cousins, to meet my grandparents, and to really like have that connection. But apart from that, I didn't really have a connection to India. I was Tanzanian. But what happened was, and then something else to complicate that even further was that when I was 16 years old and I took my first gap year, I was trying to figure out where I want to go to school. And for some reason, I didn't want to continue school in Tanzania. I wanted to go abroad, and I figured out that Malaysia would be a great place. So in those 8 months, I was applying to college, I was applying to high school, I was convincing my dad to let me go. And I was like 16 years old when I was supposed to go there. And finally he allowed me to go there. I went to Malaysia and I had a fantastic time. I really, really made a lot of friends. And finally, I was in a country where I didn't look like how I looked right now. I didn't have dreadlocks. I just was, yeah, I looked like this in these pictures, but I fit in a country where, people looked at me. And Mariana's asking, how did I convince my dad? It was really, really hard, because, well, I made a deal with him that if I get 5 A's in my IGCSEs, 5 A's out of 8 subjects, he's going to allow me to do it. And so I worked super hard. I studied. I got 7 A's out of 8 A's in school. And then he didn't keep his promise. He didn't. He said, no, I'm not. It's too expensive. I said, what do you mean it's too expensive? You told me that I'm supposed to go. So I really fought with him for 7 months, and I got really, really. I got depressed. I mean, I was like, what the hell? I've like made a vision for my life, and now how can you say that? So I really fought for it. I threw tantrums, and I was a typical teenager who was really hard on him. And then I finally allowed him to agree. And then, I mean, I convinced him to agree, and I went. But then when I was in Malaysia, I felt amazing, because this was my first time completely being alone. I had no one that I knew in the country. I had my own house. I was like pretty, like, yeah, I had I could go clubbing, underage clubbing. I did all of those things when I was in Malaysia. I had a great time. But then, and I also did really well in school after also having fun. I did a lot of extracurricular activities. I did a lot of clubs. I did a lot of, I even graduated as valedictorian. I graduated as second highest grades in the school. And then reality struck, and I couldn't be in Malaysia because I was only there for a student visa, and I had to come back to Tanzania. And when I was in Tanzania, my parents were now fighting quite a bit. And obviously now 15 years, 16 years of, I mean, now it was 20 years of their marriage, all of the cracks had started getting bigger, and they were really fighting, and they were on the verge of a divorce, and it was just not a very good environment. So I had come back to Tanzania. I felt more Malaysian than anything in my identity, and but I couldn't go back to Malaysia. And in Africa, in Tanzania, I couldn't. I'm not automatically Tanzanian. When I walk on the streets, people will call me Mzungu, which is like white person, or Chinese or Indian or whatever else, or Arab, but anything but Tanzanian. So I really didn't feel like I belonged there. And at age that was at age 18, and I really had something, a strong identity crisis. That's the closest thing that I can call it. Like, I didn't feel Tanzanian. I couldn't feel Malaysian because I wasn't allowed to go to the country, and I definitely did not feel Indian, even though my parents had taken me throughout my childhood to go to India and connect with my family. So I was in this really weird space. I'd also studied in India for 3 months, which I'll tell you about in a moment, but I just didn't understand who I am. Like, am I Tanzanian? Am I Indian? Am I Malaysian? I didn't know, and it was a really dark moment where I just didn't have any motivation. But what I decided to do is face my face my fears, and my fears was going to India. Like, I didn't want to be associated to being Indian for some reason. I had been taught that that's not a good thing. But my father said you should go, and I fought with him, and then finally he won, and I agreed. And I went to India. And what happened when I went to India is, and this was like my second gap year now, between university. He said, I had come back from Malaysia. I was applying for different unis. I was supposed to go to the University of Amsterdam. My dad said, no, we're not going because it's too expensive. And he said, the only way that you'll be able to go to university is if you get a scholarship. So this whole 1 year during my gap year, I'm busy applying for scholarships. I applied for like 30 different universities in Australia, Canada, Lithuania, like Estonia, Singapore, like all over the world. I applied for universities, and wherever I would get a scholarship is where I'd go. But in this duration of the gap year, my dad sent me to India, and my purpose was, okay, let me face this part of my identity that I've been suppressing. So off I went, and I went to do a yoga course. Something told me go and do yoga. I don't know what it was. Okay, I think I know what it was. What it was is that I was in India, and I was meeting a lot of these tourists who were coming, and I was like, okay, what do they like about India? Why are there so many tourists and people coming here to study yoga? There must be something about it. So I went to the first class. I learned about the yoga philosophy. There was a teacher who was telling me about the mind and about the energy channels and about prana and about chakras, and I'm like, what are you talking about? How can you prove that we have energy channels in our body, and how do you prove that you have chakras if you can't see them? I'm used to, like, things that you can prove. That's what I've been educated on. If you can prove it, if you can see it, it exists. But if it doesn't exist, if you can't see it through a microscope, it doesn't. So I was that annoying student. I was an A plus student, always trying to be like the person who was debating and so on. So I was debating with my yoga teacher, and he slowly humbled me. And I got many other teachers, and they just pushed me to keep on trying. And so over the course of 6 months being in India, I did this yoga course. And growing up, I was never really a sporty person. I was never really flexible. I was never really strong. I never did like football or basketball or anything like that. So this was my first time really using my body. And as Michelle was saying earlier, the growth zone is outside of the comfort zone, and that's exactly what I was doing here. I was in that yoga course. I was the worst out of all, because everybody else was doing that yoga teacher training course had done at least 3 years of yoga. These people are like flexible people. They're like people who can do handstands and headstands and everything. So I was the worst in the class. I was at the back. I was doing 6 hours a day. I was sweating. But after that, 6 months, and especially that 1 month of a teacher training course, there I felt a transformation in me. I felt, and I was, hearing these mantras, and I was hearing all about yoga philosophy and so on. And finally, it made sense to me that this is such a beautiful part of my heritage that I've been suppressing and ignoring, and feeling like I don't want to be associated to it. Why? Why did I want to do that? It was just a shame that I had in in my internal world that I started embracing, and I started like accepting, and I physically in my body pushed myself to become fitter and to become more flexible and to feel my body opening, and all of that identity crisis that I had, all of that depressive moments that I had, all of a sudden really just started shedding, and I just felt really really empowered. And I shaved my head, as you can see in these pictures. I cut my hair. I got one of the other yoga students to get scissors, and they just cut, and I took all my hair and I put it in the river Ganga in India. And I said, that was May 7th, 2016, 2017, May 7th. I put my hair in the water, and I said, I am now a new person. And so this is something that I would have never learned in school. I would have never learned to be to understand who I am, to understand what my identity is. And so this is the first lesson that I learned, is that what other people think of you really does not matter. Whether other people think that you're Indian or brown or black or white or whatever it is, like, I think that what you think of you is what's the most important thing. And really, you're free to decide your own identity, and you're free to really create that for yourself. Like, if somebody asks me who I am today, whether I'm Tanzanian or Indian or Malaysian, I'm I guess added Mexico to that as well, because I used to live in Mexico and I learned that, and that became a really strong part. So I'm really a global citizen. I'm Tanzanian and I'm Indian and I'm Malaysian and I'm Mexican, and it's okay. Like, you decide for yourself who you want to be, and that is really the strength. Yeah, exactly, Jasmine. You create your own reality. You're in charge, and that's really, really, that's one of the reasons that I decided to get dreadlocks, is for me to have a constant reminder that I am who I am, and I'm in charge. Like, when I walk down the streets and people look at me, I'm automatically different. I'm automatically outside of the crowd because of the way I look, and that just gives me so much confidence. So I really encourage you that go and discover who you are when you're on this gap year. Go and figure out the depths of your identity. Really, like, introspect about all the experiences in your life, because that's what creates you. And don't be shameful of anything. Obviously we're taught in society to be guilty, to be shameful, to be suppressing our own experiences. But every single bit of your experience is your strength. Turn that into a strength. You are a mosaic of some beautiful experiences. Yeah, Apollo says we aren't just how we're born or who others think we should be. Exactly, we are who we create. Thank you so much. Okay, so one more next lesson. So right now you see me, and I'm doing I'm quite comfortable here talking to you. I'm sitting in a room here in the UK where I've been invited at a conference where I'm also speaking. So I get called, and I'm always doing a lot of presentations, and I'm pitching my documentary in film festivals, and I'm pitching my documentary in markets, trying to raise funds. And now I'm really comfortable to speak, but it wasn't always that way. In fact, I had a stammer when I was about 12 or 13 years old. My father, again, who is coming again and again in these stories, which I should probably talk to him. It's been a while that I haven't, because I miss him right now and I'm talking to him. But anyway, he pushed me to go. He wanted me to connect more with India. So when I was 12 years old, he sent me to a boarding school in India. It was an all boys school, and it was a religious school. So you had to wake up in the morning, and I only survived for 3 months there before dropping out and coming running back home to Tanzania. But the reason that I came back running home to Tanzania, and I hated the experience in India, is not just because it was a boys school, but nothing bad against single gender schools or boys schools or anything like that, but that wasn't the reason. The reason that I didn't enjoy that school is because of one experience. Some of the teachers, they wanted me, because somehow my English was a little bit better than other students in that school. They wanted me to do this competition where you have to memorize a speech about Winston Churchill. Like, the competition is that every single person memorizes this World War I speech called Blood, Sweat, Toil, and Tears. The speech that Winston Churchill did to rally the whole nation to go to war. I had to memorize this, like, 8 paragraphs, and I went on stage, and I had memorized the speech like probably 2 hours before the time of the competition. I had the speech nailed down. I knew how to read, to do the whole thing without looking on paper. So I got on stage and I start speaking, and I still have the paper in front of me just in case. And I say the first sentence. I look at the audience, and I've forgotten now everything that I've memorized. So I'm reading the paper now, and trying to get through the first paragraph, and halfway through, I just got stuck. Like, I looked at the audience again, and I saw a couple of people who were bullying me, because I used to get bullied when I was in school, just because I looked Indian, but I wasn't Indian. And so people were like, who do you think you are? You think you're so fancy? You're different from us. So they were bullying me for that, and I saw them grinning in the audience. And I still remember that, because it was such a nasty moment where, like, they were literally making fun of me as I was getting stuck and I was stammering and I couldn't enunciate the words that were on paper. I just completely froze, and nothing was coming out of my mouth anymore. And then literally I didn't finish even one paragraph. There were six paragraphs. I didn't even finish the first one, and I ran off stage and I started crying. And that was a really, really difficult experience, because yeah, that was an experience that made me quit the school and come back to Tanzania. But then a few years later, and now, as I said, I've been doing a lot of public speaking, I've been doing film pitching, and I've been doing a lot more of um, I've been doing a lot more public speaking. And the reason that I was able to succeed was one particular experience. When I was 16 years old, I was invited to go to the UN, the United Nations, in Nairobi. And in Nairobi, they asked me to do a speech on deforestation and on climate. And that went really well, because I started telling a story about lemurs, and I started telling a story about certain types of monkeys that were in the forest, who were suffering from the deforestation. I was able to tell stories about certain types of medicine that the communities use to heal themselves. And that was something that I was truly passionate about, because I grew up close to nature, and that was something that geography was always my favorite subject. So I was talking about something that was truly something I cared about inside. So the the whole story of this is that, the world that is inside of you determines the world that is outside. Because I was being told to talk about Winston Churchill and war, and like a whole thing that I had no care about, and I had no knowledge about, and no personal connection about, I didn't do well. I was stammering, and I couldn't, like, I was just saying words. Those words meant nothing. I had no picture about it. But the moment that I started talking about nature, the moment that I started talking about wildlife and animals, which is something that I was always deeply passionate about, it started coming out, right? So really figure out what is the world inside of you. Like, really figure out what do you care about, and that's really what's going to drive you. Like, during this gap year, whatever experiences that you have a journal, have a diary where you're going to log the feelings. Like, something that was really life changing for me, and this was a book that I read called The Artist's Way. So any of you who are considering and to pursue art, whether it's music, whether it's drawing, whether it's painting, sculpting, whatever art, if there's some, and I think everybody is an artist. When we were kids, we were always artists. Kids are always playing, kids are always experimenting. But as we go to school, and as we get mentors, and maybe our parents, maybe society, people tell us, oh, you're not good enough, or that art is quite ugly, or whatever comment, subtle comments that we get, that always scars our inner artists, our playful soul. So this book called The Artist's Way is about recovering that inner artist, and figuring out that calling inside of you. So I think all of us, yeah, my point was that in that book, it says, it's what kind of art are you in? Yes. Love it. In that book, it says, you need to do morning pages. So every single day you wake up and you just vomit out your thoughts onto paper. Just literally have a brain fart. Like, write 3 pages about anything, whether it was something that you dreamt about, whether it's your feelings at the moment, whether it's every single morning. That practice of journaling, I did that for a whole year. And I never even read those pages after. I was just, the whole point of it wasn't to make crafty writing, it wasn't to create poetry or prose or anything like that. It was literally to just get what's in my mind on paper. And just a simple exercise like that. Some people do meditation, some people do this, but a lot of people find meditation quite hard, for me included. Even though I've done these yoga courses, I find meditation a little bit hard, because there's just so many things on my mind. So what was really helpful for me was, oh, Ruby does origami, great, that's really awesome. Like, really getting in touch with your introspective part, right? Like, whatever practice it is that makes you introspect and makes you feel what is this inside world. Because the world that is inside of you determines the world that is outside of you. Obviously, there's a relationship, vice versa. Your environment also determines how you feel inside, and that's all the more reason to go out of the comfort zone, to go travel, to go and experience new cultures, to go and learn a new language, because that will also impact and unlock feelings inside of you. So really, really be sensitive to the feelings that you feel on your gap year, and really be sensitive to how you're responding to the experiences that are happening, and vice versa. Let the world inside of you come out as well, and manifest it onto paper, manifest it into origami, manifest it into your journal, and really figure out and do this brain fart, this vomit, whatever you want to call it. Like, really feel the insides. All right, next story. Okay, so this was, I love the belief of fold 1,000 paper cranes and the gods owe you one wish. I'm on 837. Oh, cool. Apollo and Ruby, I love the chat that's going on here. Guys, please ask more questions. Let's make it interactive. We're here to really do a two-way conversation. Okay, so this next story is about uh, the Amazon rainforest. So the first time that I wanted to, so after that UN experience, when I was talking about nature, when I was talking about deforestation, when I was talking about these monkeys and plants in the forest, I realized that I actually have a gift. The thing that I was struggling with, the thing that I had a stammer with, when I overcame that, I realized that this is actually my gift, is to share the voice of nature. Like, I can really talk about conservation and environment and caring about nature, and get people to care about it. And then that eventually turned into an ambition of creating nature films. So at age 16, 17, I had this idea, I want to make nature films. But I never ended up going to study that. I ended up going to study in York University in Canada, and I studied international studies. And what I wanted to do was figure out, how the world works. What are the global systems of power, privilege, paradigms of, what the world controls. So I did that in uni, and then I realized halfway that, wait a minute, what am I doing here? Wasn't my dream to become a nature documentary filmmaker? Why am I studying, this other thing? Even though it was related, one day I realized, no, I want to be a filmmaker. And that was the first year of uni. And I got this opportunity in my email, a professor sent. It was like a backpacking adventure. It was called Operation Groundswell, Backpacktivism Adventures, going around the world. And so the moment I opened that website, I saw a program called Amazon Adventure, and immediately I felt a calling. I said, I need to go to the Amazon. I want to go to the Amazon rainforest, and I want to make a film. So all of a sudden, I remembered my original dream, that if not now, then when? If I'm going to go to the Amazon, I'm going to make a film. So what I did is I started delivering food around Toronto. I got a bicycle. I had about $200 in my account, and I spent all of the $200. Like, bicycle probably cost me $150. So I had $50 left in my account. I spent 150 on the bike. I signed up for this app. I started delivering food around, and I had about 3 or 4 months left before this program that I had signed up for to go to Peru. And in those 3 or 4 months while I was cycling, there was only one thing I'm thinking about, is I want to buy camera equipment. I want to buy a little drone. I want to buy a gimbal. I want to buy a microphone. And I want to go to the Amazon to make a film. So I do that. I buy my camera gear. Off I am in Peru. This is a picture of, so for 4 days, we were on this river on a little boat called a lancha. And this boat is like, it's not even a passenger boat. It's a boat where people are like transporting, oranges and eggs and supplies, like little, across the river, there's this little pueblitos, or these little villages where people are living. So this boat that I'm on a hammock, and it's being transported, and we're going to different villages. And during the night, I look up in the sky, and I'm just looking at this kind of picture, like it's a sky full of stars. I'm literally imagining like 5, 10, 15 kilometers around me, there is no people. There's just this river, there's this forest. We were in this long stretch in a very remote part, and I'm just figuring out, like, I'm zooming myself out in the satellite image, and it's a completely dark forest area that I was in. And I I was in the boat, and there was this little room where this guy was sitting with a bunch of oranges. He was selling oranges to people, and I asked him. I knew a little bit of Spanish, and like I was trying to make a documentary about indigenous people and their connection to nature. So I asked this guy, "¿Qué es la Pachamama?" So I asked him, "What is la Pachamama?" And la Pachamama is what the indigenous people in the Amazon call nature. and I'm sitting out there. It's like probably 9 p.m. and it's just me and this local guy with the oranges. He gives me an orange, and I'm biting an orange, he's biting an orange, and it's really citrus, and I ask him, "¿Qué es la Pachamama? What is nature to you?" And we're sucking in on this orange, and for 45 seconds or a minute or 2 minutes, he's just not answering. He's silent, and I'm like, okay, this guy is thinking really deeply about this answer, and he's really introspecting and pondering on my question. And a minute and a half goes by, and then he says, "Bueno, buenas noches," which means good night. And then he closes the door, and I'm out there. I'm just like, okay, I didn't get my answer, but I'm looking out in the sky. So I've got this unanswered question. And then 4 days later, I meet these people, Lucho and Casilda. And they are, sometimes you need an orange and some deep talk, says Ruby. Yeah, go and do that in your gap year. Go and find some oranges and have some deep talks with some local people. So I go to the Amazon rainforest and I meet these indigenous people. This guy is called Luis. He's a quadriplegic. So when he was young, he had polio and he never really recovered from it. And these are the people who I ended up making a film about. And I'm gonna share you the link to the film so that you can watch it after. I'm just gonna put it here in the chat. So I'm talking to these artists. I'm making a film about them. I'm with them for like 4 or 5. I was with them for 2 weeks, and mind you, I speak very little Spanish. So I'm just really spending time with these people. I'm observing how they're doing art. I'm looking at these beautiful paintings that they're doing, and what they do is they take these plant medicines that allow them to dream about their ancient ancestral wisdom, and they're putting it down on the paintings. It was in Peru, and in Peru they're painting these visions, they're painting these mythologies, they're recovering this art. And after this moment, he told me, Lucho told me something, because he realized that I've got some artistry in me, and obviously I'm trying to figure out how to use a camera. I'm still learning. I'm making my first film. And he tells me something that I want to share with you all today, because this is a lesson that I learned from him, which has stayed with me until today. And he said, "You are the creator of your own reality. As an artist, you are allowed to portray the world however you want." And Jazz already said it in this chat before. But really, really, I can't drive this point home enough. Like, really, like, we are given the miracle of experiencing life and really, seeing it the way that we want. One situation can be seen in 8 billion ways. Every single person has their own perspective. And again, coming back to the internal world, like, you have the possibility to not only see the world how you want to see it, but also to shape the world how you want to shape it. And yeah, um, Jasmine says here, research it on your own. She's talking about ayahuasca because the film is about ayahuasca. So please, please, please do your research about this. And watch the film and do more research. But yeah, this is when I realized, like, like, for these artists, they're portraying nature in the most beautiful ways. They're not doing like literal paintings. They're really imagining characters. They're changing the colors of things in nature, and they have the potential to do that. And same thing with you in this gap year. However you want to design it, however you want to create it, you really are an artist. And so, moving on to my last story. Okay, so I know a lot of you over here are entrepreneurs and wanting to start your own projects, and a lot of you were interested about AfriSauce. So I want to tell you about, after all of these experiences, I ended up dropping out of university, even though I had a full scholarship to go and study in Canada. After having gone to the Amazon and after having gone to my gap year and really figuring out my own way of learning and figuring out what I that the camera became my school. The camera, and meeting people and interviewing them and asking them questions about their beliefs and asking them questions about um, the way that they live, that became my way of learning. So when I went back to university, it just wasn't the same. Like, I really felt that I'm missing something. I really felt that I could learn far more when I'm going to the roots, when I'm going to the people on the ground. And that's what I'm doing today. But before starting AfriSauce and before now working with indigenous communities to empower them to tell their own stories, I started a business called Halisia Travel. And Halisia Travel was it was a business that ran for 1 year, 1 year and a half, and then COVID happened. But even before COVID, I decided to shut it down because it was just really hard and it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. But what it was filmmaking and photography mentorships. It's kind of the precursor to AfriSauce, where I was charging people. I was designing these 2 week itineraries of different places that I'd been to, and I was asking people to sign up to these adventures where they come with me and we create stories together. And I ended up running two beautiful programs, taking people to Tanzania and doing that. So I did that, and I realized that, you know what, like, I don't the people who were joining these trips were a lot of privileged people from the global north, who were able to pay $3,000, $2,000, or however much I was asking for to join me on a trip. But I wasn't really being fulfilled by that. I wanted other local people to join me on these trips. I wanted other local photographers and filmmakers, and unfortunately, they were not able to afford what I was offering. So I ended up shutting this down, and then after that, the other goal that I had was to be a YouTuber. So actually, when I was by this time now, when I started Halisia, I was 22 and 23, and then I started YouTube at 23 and 24. And when I was 24, I did this project called Project 24. And what it was is, 24, throughout my age of 24, I wanted to make 24 different videos, and this was over ambitious. It was a big goal, and I knew it was over ambitious, but I wanted to achieve it, and I could have achieved it. But throughout doing it, I made about 3 videos, or I made 4 videos, and then I stopped doing it. And the reason that I stopped doing it was because, like, I just started narrating my own life. Like, every time that I was not on the camera, I was like, just because of my personality, I just started I stopped living in the present, and I was always like, okay, how do I want to portray this moment that I'm living right now on a YouTube video? And I just started getting into this mental cycle of not living in the present and instead trying to present my present moment and package it in a video. And it just started, like, really playing with my mind, and really, like, it got to me. I wasn't ready to do a YouTube channel. Maybe in the future I'll do it, but at that moment I didn't do it. So I ended up getting, like, about 400 subscribers, and then I stopped this project. So Halisia Travel, I started that, stopped that. This YouTube channel, I started that. And while I was doing both of these things, I thought that this is it. This is exactly what I want to do. Thanks, Apollo. I would subscribe. Mariana as well. If you do, I'll definitely subscribe. Okay, I'll consider it. So both of those things, when I was doing Halisia Travel, I thought that this is exactly what I want to do. And with YouTube, this was exactly what I want to do. I had made, like, a 1 year plan. I had created a Patreon page. I had figured out a business model of how I'm going to monetize this. Because, again, my dad, once I dropped out, and my mom, like, they were always asking before dropping out, they said, you better have a plan. And what is your plan? So I ended up lying to them. I made up, like, I gave them a fake business plan. I said, I'm going to start an energy drink company or something, because they're Indian and they want to know the hard facts. Like, how am I going to make money? So I to convince them, I made a business plan, and I convinced them that I know what I'm doing, and they allowed me to drop out. They weren't happy, but anyway, it wasn't their choice. I dropped out. They stopped talking to me for a bit, but in the end, now they're really proud of me. But anyways, I started doing this stuff out of my own pocket, was passionate about it, but I realized in the end it's not what I wanted to do. And now I'm doing what I'm doing, but I don't regret any of those things, because all of those things taught me a lot. And what I'm doing now is because I did all of these other things before. So I just want to say that, take every experience as a course. Like, take risks. And Michelle also said, like, calculated risks, right? Like, when you go, and like, this gap year is a blank canvas. You can really decide to take up any project and start any project that you want, because it's going to teach you, even if you don't end up doing it. And you might think that this is it, this is really something that you want to do, or maybe you're not sure it's what you want to do or not, but just do it. Like, really get your hands dirty, because you're not going to learn that in school. Nobody's going to teach you how to register a business. Nobody's going to teach you how to sell filmmaking adventure programs. Nobody's going to teach you how to create a website. I've learned all of that on my own. Even filmmaking, I learned it on my own. So, your definition of education is truly unique to you. You are the creator of your education, not just a recipient of a prepackaged education. And that's the beauty of a gap year, is that you get to craft exactly what it is. And the rest of this kickoff event today, you're going to get all the tools to really figure out how to design your gap year. And it's going to be unique to you, and for the rest of your life, trust me, you're really, really going to look back at this moment and be like, heck yeah, I really created where I am now. 10 years down the line, you're going to be exactly where you wanted to be because of these decisions that you're about to make in the following year. So really, really, like, make it unique to you. There is no need to follow other people or anything like that. So that brings me to my last point. And today, I'm using these big cameras. Like, I really didn't know that I'm going to be doing this. It started out like my first camera that I bought was a used camera from Henry's in Toronto, and I bought these, like, cheap mics, and I bought like a tripod and everything. And now I'm using, like, this camera that I own right now is $25,000, and this rig that I'm wearing is another 6,000. So at any given moment, I'm like, I never even thought that I'm able to make that much money, or to be able to hold, like, this is Hollywood level equipment that I'm using right now, and I would have never imagined. But that started from that one decision of just, let me go and create my own reality, and let me go and buy a used camera, and let me go to the Amazon and learn from the indigenous people. So you never know where this path is going to take you. So really, really, like, take the path less traveled, like, make it unique, make it passionate, and really, really figure out, yeah, don't try to follow anyone else. I mean, you can take inspiration from other people, like you're taking inspiration from me, and maybe I've inspired you to do something similar to what I have. And please feel free, if I have, reach out to me on Instagram, send me a DM, let's chat further. I'm really, really happy to give more advice and really, really give much more practical tips. So feel free, let me know. And yeah, this is the last thing that I want to leave you with, is like, really make it unique and take the path less traveled.